Hello and good evening, and thank you for joining us for this webinar about the Lower Thames Crossing Community Impact Consultation. Tonight we're going to be providing you with an update and summary of the impacts of our proposals on the community and the environment and how we plan to mitigate them specifically for the Brentwood and Havering areas. To be clear, this isn't an exhaustive account of the impacts and proposals, but instead we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable elements and changes since our design refinement consultation last year. There are many ways that you can ask specific questions, and I'll give you more details on that in just a moment. So we're going to start off by briefly introducing ourselves. My name's Sarah and I'm working for Highways England and I look after communications and engagement, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar.
Good evening everyone, my name's Steve Roberts. I'm the Engineering Design Lead for Lower Thames Crossing and I'll be helping to answer some of your questions later.
Hello there, I'm Gareth Fotherlow, the Development Director for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll also be helping answer the questions later on.
Thank you. And we've also got Emma and Hayley with us this evening, who you can see on camera throughout the webinar. Now, they're British Sign Language interpreters and will be providing sign language translation for all of those in attendance who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Now, should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, simply hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. The webinar will also have live captions. So today's webinar is going to be split into three sections. The first section is a live introduction to the scheme presented by me. Then there's the middle section, which is a pre-recorded presentation outlining the main changes with a particular emphasis on the area north of the A13. And the final section will be a live Q&A session where our chaps who have just introduced themselves will be available to answer any questions that you may have about this consultation. So we're going to begin this evening with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project and give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know how your feedback from previous consultations has shaped the project. We'll tell you about some recent changes and then the impacts of the construction and operations the road will have on local communities and on the environment. At the end of today's session, we'll be holding a Q&A session where we'll be taking and answering your questions about this community impacts consultation. You probably are aware that we've produced a number of documents to help explain our plans, and as we move through the webinar, we'll be signposting where you can go to find out more information on a particular topic. These include the guide to our consultation, which is an overview of the information included in our consultation materials and directions on where to find out more detail in our technical documents. There's the construction update. This is an overview of the methods that would be used to build the new road and tunnel and changes to existing utilities infrastructure. It also details the measures proposed to mitigate potential adverse effects of construction. The operations update provides information on the new road, the junctions, the tunnel, utilities, environmental design, and the green infrastructure. It also includes changes we've made since the last consultation. It includes some updates as well to our traffic forecast and explains how the new road would impact the environment. And if I could recommend just one suite of documents to you, it would be our ward impact summaries. These go into a lot of detail about the changes and the impacts of the new road that might be in the area near you during the construction and operation. This covers topics such as traffic, noise, and air quality that you might be interested in. The You Said We Did document is a summary of responses received during our 3 previous consultations, and it looks at how these have been used to further refine the project's design. And last but not least, we've produced a series of maps to help show the project during construction and when it's open to traffic. And there's also an interactive map on our dedicated consultation website. Now, if you do have any questions, please feel free to post them at any time, whenever they come to mind, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. But of course, there are a range of different ways that you can do this. If you want to speak to someone one-to-one, then do book a telephone callback with a member of the project team or come along to one of our consultation events. All the consultation materials are available on our dedicated website, and you can ask for a printed copy to be delivered to your home free of charge, or pick up copies at libraries or civic centres near the proposed route. We'll cover these again at the end and highlight the different ways in which you can make sure that you have your say. So we're going to move now to our pre-recorded section, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Hi, my name's Claire Donnelly and I'm here to take you through the details of the Community Impacts Consultation. There's going to be a lot of information to cover, so I'll be joined a bit later by my colleague John Barkman. Just to recap on that video, the Lower Thames Crossing is a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock, Havering and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double road capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies while offering new connections, better journeys and fewer delays. On the north side, it would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. On the south side of the River Thames, the new road would link to the A2 and M2 in Kent. So let me start by telling you more about what we are consulting on. To get permission to build and operate the new crossing, we must follow a specific planning process and seek a Development Consent Order, or DCO. In October 2020, we submitted an application for a DCO, but following feedback and discussions with the Planning Inspectorate, we withdrew it to provide more information. We have been working to address the Inspectorate's feedback and, as part of this process, we are holding this further round of public consultation to seek your views on our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing and how we will mitigate its impact, changes to the project since the design refinement consultation in 2020, and how responses received at each of our previous consultations have informed the development of the project. And it's this where we start our presentation tonight. Consultation and engagement have been critical in helping us design the project to reduce the impacts and to maximise the benefits. We have carried out a record-breaking programme of consultation, engagement and design development. Over the last 8 years, we have been in public consultation for over 350 days, with almost 90,000 of you giving us your views. In 2018, we held a statutory consultation to provide members of the public and anyone with an interest in the project with an update of the route, as well as the opportunity to have their say. This was followed by a supplementary consultation in January 2020, which was held to obtain people's views on changes made as a result of feedback from statutory consultation and technical engagement with stakeholders. A further consultation, our design refinement consultation, was held in summer 2020. We have also carried out environmental surveys, traffic modelling and detailed design work, such as identifying diversions to existing utilities. These are just a handful of the changes we have made following your feedback. To improve your journey, we have provided three lanes along most of the route, including the tunnel. To reduce the impact on local communities, we have lowered the height of the road between North Ockenden and South Ockenden to minimise visual impact to communities in these areas. 80% of the whole route is now in the tunnel, a cutting, or behind an embankment. We have included a new footbridge over the M25 to connect the Thames Chase Community Forest and Land of the Fans project. We have also added noise barriers and earthworks to reduce noise. The look and material of those noise barriers will be developed by our contractor at the detailed design stage, but you can see their proposed heights and locations in our consultation materials. We've increased the number of new or upgraded walking paths, cycle paths and bridleways to 46 kilometres. That's 2 kilometres of path for every 1 kilometre of new road. This includes providing connections between Thames Chase Community Forest and Belhurst Woods Country Park. Also, to reduce the impact on the environment, we've increased the number of trees we are replanting and are now planting 260 hectares of new woodland, 200% more than will be affected by the project. We have moved the slip roads to and from the A127 at the M25 junction 29 closer to the roundabout to avoid diverting overhead power lines and pylons. The You Said We Did document is a summary of the responses we've received during the previous consultations and how these have been used to further refine the project's design. It discusses each consultation in a separate chapter with a breakdown of the feedback we received, our responses to both negative and positive comments, and how we made changes to our plans. This document, along with all of our consultation materials, is available on our consultation website. I'll now hand you over to John to discuss recent changes.
Thank you, Claire. Hello, my name's John Barkman. I'm going to speak to you about the recent changes on the project. Your feedback during our design refinement consultation in the summer of 2020 has helped further shape the development of the project. We've also made some changes to the project as a result of continued engagement with stakeholders, ongoing design work and assessments, and a greater understanding of the technical constraints to the building and operating of the new road. Two important ways in which our plans have developed relate to our proposed order limits and utility works. The order limits, which was known as the development boundary in previous consultations, are the outermost edges of the Lower Thames Crossing project. They show the extent to which land can be acquired or used for the project and are in the areas in which the development consents order applies. Since our last consultation, we've reduced the area within the revised order limits from 22.9 to 22.2 kilometers square. We've also reduced the number of properties within the order limits to 130 from 150. We've been working very hard to reduce the impact on the landscape, local residents, landowners, and businesses, while also working to reduce any visual impacts and restrictions associated with the utility networks when the work is complete. All of our changes are listed in Chapter 3 of our operations update, but here are some of the key changes. At the Mardyke Valley North Road, the proposed replacement of Orset Fen common land has been reconfigured and the order limits amended. The landscape design near the Mardyke crossing has been amended to provide a suitable ditch network and habitat for water voles. An overall reduction to the odor limits around Ockenden Road and P Lane to avoid impact in the existing vegetation. A flood relief channel would be built next to the Mardyke at the western end of the proposed viaduct. The size of the compensatory flood storage area to the north of Green Lane has been reduced. At the M25 junction 29, an extension of the odor limits around St. Mary's Lane substation to include an existing substation, which some of our utility diversions will connect to, woodland planting and environmental mitigation proposals in the area to the north of junction 29 of the M25 and around Folks Lane woodland have been changed to avoid impacting a local business. And access from Moore Lane East and from Lamberum Gardens is no longer needed due to the proposed introduction of access directly from the new Junction 29 road. We're committed to creating a positive green legacy. We're therefore proposing two new open space sites, Tilbury Fields on the north bank of the Thames and Chalk Park in Kent. The Riverside Park will be just to the south of the northern tunnel entrance and will be around 45 hectares in size. This land is going through a phase of restoration and improvement and is next to the site of the former Tilbury Power Station. Over the past 10 years, many of the major infrastructure projects in London have contributed to clean material to raise the ground level around and restore it back to farmland. We're likely to be the last remaining project to work in this area. Tilbury Fields will be created using some 2 million cubic meters of material dug from the tunnels and other associated works in the areas. We're able to save around 470,000 lorry movements as we won't need to transport this material on public roads. We want to know your views on the height and the landform once the design of the park is finalized. You'll find a specific question about this within the consultation response form. Although not featured in our consultation, we're also planning a new 100-hectare community woodland whole farm in Brentwood, Essex. For further information on our new open spaces, you can view the guide to construction and operation update documents in our construction consultation website. I'll now hand over back to Claire to speak about construction.
Thanks, John. We are absolutely committed to reducing the impact of building the new road crossing on you and the environment. In this section, we will give you an overview of where we plan to be working in your area and cover the sequence and timing of the work, its potential impact, and our plans to reduce those impacts. You can find out more in our construction update document on our website, and the detail is broken down by your area in our ward summaries. Our work will be divided into 4 construction sections to help make sure that they are delivered on time with the minimum impact on local communities, the environment, and road users. There are two sections in your area in Thurrock, Brentwood and Havering. These are construction areas C and D. Construction section C encompasses the A13 junction with a southern spur reaching down to the Tilbury Loop railway line. It also reaches up to Green Lane in the north and to the Orsett Cock roundabout in the east. There are 7 proposed construction compounds in section C. You can see them here on the map. The first is Stifford's Clay Row compounds east and west. These would be used for construction north of the northwest section of the A13 Lower Thames Crossing junction. We would build a temporary access haul route from the west compound from Meadbridge Road. Before then, Stifford's Clay Road would be used to access both east and west compounds. When the compounds are taken down, we would remove all temporary assets and the land would be reinstated. Long lane compounds A and B would be used to support the construction of the slip roads south of the A13 and west of the A1089, as well as the western underpass bridge below the A13. Access would be via Long Lane. We would set up the compounds early in the construction period and they would be in use until August 2028. The Stanford Road compound would support works affecting the slip roads between the A13 and the A1013. The compound is located on Hornsby Lane, which would be permanently severed either side of the new road. Before the road is closed, we would put in turning arrangements. When the compound is taken down, we would remove all temporary utility works and infrastructure and the land would be reinstated. The Brentwood Road compound would support works south of the A13 towards the Tilbury Loop railway line. Access would be from Brentwood Road between the Orsett Cock Junction and the Lower Thames Crossing route. The compound would be in place from early 2024 to mid-2028. The Station Road compound would support works at the Tilbury Viaduct and on connecting roads. It would be in place for approximately 3 years from 2024. Where possible, temporary utility works needed for each compound would be carried out at the same time as permanent works to reduce the length of our programme and its impact on the local community. Section D is the part of the Lower Thames Crossing between the A13 junction and the M25, including the M25 junction. There are 5 proposed construction compounds in Section D, as you can see on the map here. Moving from the north, we start with the Worley Street compound. This compound would support the widening of the M25, mostly around Junction 29. Access would be via a temporary haul road from Worley Street. The Ockenden Road compound would support construction of the new bridge to carry the Ockenden Road over the new road's northbound carriageway, the widening of the M25 northbound carriageway, and the earthworks to the west of the M25. Site access would be via Clay Tie Road at the start of works before a temporary works access is built off of the M25. After that, Clay Tie Road would only be used for workforce access. The M25 compound would support construction of the Lower Thames Crossing between the A13 and the M25. As at the Ockenden Road compound, site access would be via Clay Tie Road at the start of the works before a temporary works access is built off of the M25. After that, Clay Tie Road would only be used for workforce access. The Meadbridge Road compound would be used to support the construction of the new road between the M25 and the new Mardyke Viaduct. Construction vehicles would need to use Fen Lane at the start of the programme for around 9 months to allow utilities works to be carried out. We would need to use traffic management measures with closures in place at approximately 300-metre sections of the road. The Mardyke compound would support construction works in the area surrounding the Mardyke Viaduct, but would not be in place for the duration of the construction. Initially, access would be via Green Lane until we set up temporary haul routes for construction traffic only. During the works, access would be required from Stifford's Clay roundabout to these routes alongside the Lower Thames Crossing. Construction in each section would typically cover 3 main phases. The first is the initial works, which would involve setting up the construction compounds. Then main works, which would include the construction of the highways north and south of the Thames and all elements of the tunnels and their approaches, as well as utilities and environmental mitigation works. Finally, testing and commissioning, which is when we will make sure that the new road and its infrastructure is safe and ready to use. Here is the programme of works in section C. You can see here the various timelines when the works will be taking place. Similarly, this is the programme for works in section D. If you want to find out more about both construction programmes, please see chapter 5 of our construction update. Normal working hours are proposed to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays, plus up to 1 hour before and after for start-up and close-down procedures. Working hours for certain activities, including earthworks, would be up to 10 p.m. on Monday to Saturday. Sometimes we might need an extension, but we would agree this in advance. Tunnelling construction activities and supporting works would be carried out on a continuous 24/7 basis. We have also identified very limited highways and utilities construction activities that may need to be done overnight and at weekends. For example, where we would be tying new sections of the road into the existing road network. These works would be carried out at night and at weekends to maintain safety and reduce disruption to the road, railway and utilities networks. These works are anticipated to be for short periods, and we would usually work closely with the local authority to manage any impacts on the local community. In this region, areas of 24-hour working would include the overbridges, some utilities works, and works around the M25. These are shown in the ward impact summaries and on the interactive map. During construction, we would carry out the activities typically associated with major infrastructure projects. This includes tunnelling and earthworks, road surfacing and widening, and tie-in and finishing works. In this image, you can see the start of work on a typical cutting. These works will inevitably have an impact on the area, but by applying best practice and using technology, we can reduce that impact. Here are some examples of how. We would build dedicated haul routes to significantly reduce the number of construction vehicles using the existing roads near to the project, and we would promote car sharing and public transport to reduce the number of staff cars on these roads. We would use established practices and developing technology to minimize impacts on the environment and on road users, such as consolidating materials into fewer deliveries, having construction areas and compounds that would be located to support distinct works, reducing the need for vehicles and materials to move through the community to each location, having a booking and delivery system that would plan and monitor vehicle movements, using multimodal transport, a combination of road, water and rail to optimize the transport and delivery of materials. Planning, our contractors would produce construction logistics plans. And protecting vulnerable road users by introducing appropriate measures to protect walkers, cyclists and horse riders. By using the methods mentioned, we will reduce our impact on local traffic, but during construction, some bus routes would still need to be temporarily diverted or changed. When we carry out work next to sensitive railway lines, there may also be some weekend and night closures that will affect rail services. You can find out the detail of what specific services will be affected in our ward impact summaries. Some public rights of way, such as footpaths or bridleways, may also be affected by construction and need to be temporarily diverted or closed. Some public rights of way would be closed permanently and replaced by new ones during the construction period or once the new road is complete. Please look at our ward impact summary documents to find out about the impacts near you. To minimize construction noise and vibration, we are proposing to locate construction compounds as far away from residential areas as possible and to build earth walls or bunds around them. We are also proposing measures such as closed board fencing installed around each of the construction compounds to provide screening, the use of low noise equipment where practical, and locating noisy activities as far away as possible from noise sensitive receptors. We are also introducing a number of ways to reduce the visual impact of the project on the landscape. Visual impacts will be reduced by carefully considering the location and layout of the compounds, using screens and temporary fencing, and positioning taller facilities as far away as possible from residential properties. We will also look to revegetate stockpiles to soften their appearance. Along the proposed Lower Thames Crossing, there are a number of existing utilities, including overhead power lines, high-pressure gas pipelines, electric cables and substations, gas mains, water pipes, sewers, and fibre optic and telecom cables that would all need to be diverted to build the new road. Our proposals for utility works have evolved during the project's design and development. We have been working very closely with utilities companies to significantly reduce the environmental impacts and shorten the duration of these works. There should be no disruption to the supply of power, water, or any other utilities caused by our construction works. For more information on the planned utility works, please go to Chapter 2 of the Construction Update. When we apply to the Planning Inspectorate for permission to build the new road, we will provide a range of documents that set out how we would make sure our contractors effectively manage the impacts of construction on the environment and local communities. These are called control documents, and we are providing drafts of them as part of this consultation. They include the Code of Construction Practice, which provides a framework for how we will manage construction activity, and it becomes a legally binding document that will ensure we deliver the environmental mitigation commitments we have made. If permission to build the new road is granted to us, the control documents would be developed further by our contractors and, once agreed upon, those contractors would have legal obligations to comply with the conditions they contain. Control documents are discussed in more detail in Chapter 1 of the Construction Update. For further information on construction, please see the Construction Update document on our consultation website. And I will hand you back over to John to talk about our operational impacts.
Thank you, Claire. When the Lower Thames Crossing opens for traffic, the direct, reliable connection will bring people closer to jobs and businesses closer to their customers and suppliers. The new crossing would offer reduced congestion at the Dartford Crossing and approach roads, additional capacity, more reliable journeys across the River Thames, east of London, and will support economic growth locally, regionally, and nationally. In our operations update, we've summarized the impact of the operation of the road on your community and on the local environment. This section presents a summary of the impacts of the new road and the tunnel after their planned opening in 2029. This video gives you an overview of how the new crossing will look in Thurrock, Essex and Havering. You can see the new junction layout between the Lower Thames Crossing, the A13 and the 1089 to the west of Orsett. The new Lower Thames Crossing will cross under the new Green Bridge at Green Lane and then continue across the Mardyke River and Golden Sewer. At this point, it swings west and passes north of the landfill site and to the south of the wilderness before passing under North Road Green Bridge. It would then connect with the M25. The junction will be located just under 2 miles or 3 kilometers south of Junction 29 on the M25 near Ockenden Road and the Thames Chase Community Forest. The junction will have slip roads for northbound LTC traffic to join the M25 and the M25 traffic to join the LTC. A short section of the M25 will be reduced from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Improvement work will also be carried out on the M25 between the new junction and Junction 29. Beyond the northern section of the Lower Thames Crossing, improvement and modification works will also be needed at Junction 29 on the M25 and to the north of Junction 29. There will also be required modifications to the junction and slip roads. We've carefully assessed the road network in the area and predicted how it might perform in the future with and without the new crossing, known as the do something and the do minimum scenarios. If the Lower Thames Crossing is not built, it is expected that the high levels of traffic using the Dartford Crossing would lead to more incidents, increased journey times, and more days where traffic conditions are worse than typically experienced. We predict there would be nearly a 12% higher in the morning peak and nearly 28% higher in the evening peak if the project were not built. As a result of the Lower Thames Crossing, there are predicted to be improvements in how the road network operates around the Dartford Crossing and on other roads in Brentwood and Havering. On the wider network, conditions would remain largely unchanged, but congestion is predicted to increase on some roads, particularly those close to the project. When built, the level of daily traffic using the Dartford Crossing would fall on average by 21% in 2029 and 14% in 2044 compared to the do minimum scenario. Average speeds on that part of the network would rise and journey times would become more reliable. In our operations update, you can find the precise maps and impacts in your area, but to summarize, on roads such as the A127, there would be a reduction in traffic in some locations when the Lower Thames Crossing opens. However, in some roads on the approach to the new crossing, such as some sections on the A13, may see an increase. You can find out more about this in our Guide to Construction and Operations update. We've developed measures to reduce the noise and vibration at sensitive locations, such as people's homes or wildlife along the route and on some existing roads. For example, we've located the road as far as reasonably practical, away from noise-sensitive locations. We've also designed the new road to be at low level, with approximately 80% of the route in a cutting, false cutting, or tunnel, and use earthworks where possible to reduce noise. Mitigation measures will also include the use of low-noise road surfacing technologies on new and resurfaced roads, and noise barriers at certain locations along the route where the earthwork measures are not possible. The main method of controlling noise would be, where practical, to design the road within landscape features such as cuttings and bunds or walls of earth. However, where noise impacts are greatest, we would install noise barriers in addition to these earthwork features. The use of low noise surfacing would also reduce the traffic noise once the road is in use. This map shows where the noise barriers have been incorporated into the design along the new road and the A13. Here's an example of where the noise barriers are located. You can find out more about the location of the proposed noise barriers in Chapter 5 of the Operations Update. And this image, which is contained in the operation update, shows the areas in Havering and Brentwood with an adverse or beneficial change to the traffic noise in the opening year. As you can see, there are some areas with a major adverse change of greater than 5 decibels, and some with no changes and major beneficial changes. To find out more about the specific changes to noise in your area, please see our ward impact summaries. We've reduced the visual impact of the road by placing around 80% of the route in a cutting, false cutting, or tunnel, and where possible use earthworks or new planting to conceal the road. This image shows one of the new public rights-of-way we're creating to improve accessibility to and from Thames Chase. In the foreground, you can see some of the woodland planting alongside the M25. As our design has developed, we've taken some significant steps to avoid or minimize impacts on the local communities and the environment where possible. Some examples include a tunnel setback protected from the protected woodland to mitigate the effects on bird species, reducing working areas to mitigate habitat loss in ancient woodland and SSSI sites, the creation of habitats for protected species, forging new green corridors to join habitats along the project. But where we have been able to, we've gone further and will be delivering a net gain in biodiversity across the Lower Thames Crossing area. This includes 260 hectares of new woodland created, representing a 200% increase, over 400 hectares of arable land converted to semi-natural habitats, 40 new ponds, a 40% increase, 80% of new hedgerow created and lost, a 120% increase, and 7.3 kilometers of new ditches, a 10% increase. There are likely to be impacts on journey times for some of the bus and coach services if traffic speeds of the roads they use change once the new road opens. Most routes would not be affected, and the impact of the individual passengers would depend on where they got on and got off a particular service. For example, a commuter coach along the A2 would travel at a lower speed east of the new crossing, but at a higher speed west of it. For further information on specific bus routes that would be affected can be found in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. Working with local communities and organisations such as Sustrans, a UK walking and cycling charity, we've developed a programme of improvements for walkers, cyclists and horse riders that will connect local communities with green spaces and promote active travel choices. Following previous consultations and targeted stakeholder engagement, we developed a walkers, cyclist, horse rider strategy, which we shared at a design refinement consultation. We examined the value of the existing and potential routes. A list of possible opportunities was developed that would result in 46 kilometers of new, realigned or improved footpaths, cycleways and bridleways. In determining these, we considered factors such as connections to employment, education, recreational green space, as well as addressing historic severance. More detail on assessing the environmental impacts and mitigation is available in Chapter 5 of the Operation Update, and local information is available in the ward impact summaries. Between the A13 and around the M25 junction, improvements include creating recreational walking, cycling, horse riding routes from the Thames Chase and South Ockenden Little Bell House Community Park to the Orsett Fen and beyond, upgrading existing public rights-of-way and adding additional sections to create routes that loop around and connect people to green spaces, addressing historical severance caused by the construction of the M25. And on all, hand over back to Claire to speak about air quality.
Thanks, John. So we fully understand that many people have concerns about the effect the project will have on air quality. Although during operation of the Lower Thames Crossing, some areas are predicted to experience decreases in air quality due to changes in traffic flows across the region, there will be improvements in others and an improvement in air quality in the project-wide area overall. The change in concentrations of pollutants has been assessed, and a reduction in concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter is predicted at receptors between existing conditions and future conditions before the Lower Thames Crossing opens. Oops. One of the key aims of the project is to relieve the congested Dartford Crossing and approach roads and improve their performance by providing free-flowing north-south capacity. The Lower Thames Crossing would take over 13 million vehicles off the Dartford Crossing, which means there would be less congestion and air quality would improve. Our air quality monitoring has found that the Dartford Crossing is currently exceeding standards due to vehicle emissions. When the Lower Thames Crossing is open, air quality at Dartford would improve and areas around the Dartford Crossing would no longer exceed air quality standards. There are expected to be reductions in vehicle emissions over this period, for example, due to the uptake of electric and alternatively fueled vehicles, in part driven by the banning of sales in diesel and petrol cars from 2030. At opening year, based on the model used for our first DCO application in 2020, the assessments show that there would be localised increases on certain roads, such as the M2 junction 1 to 2. Causing air quality to get worse and exceed the national air quality objective for NO2. However, the results also show numerous air quality improvements around the A282 Dartford Crossing, where existing air quality is poor due to significant reductions in traffic and congestion. In total, 24 receptors are expected to experience a change in air quality in those areas where concentrations of pollutants are forecast to exceed the air quality objective set by the government. Of these 24, 15 are predicted to experience an improvement in air quality. The remaining 9 are predicted to experience poorer air quality once the route is open. Our air quality assessments are based on the traffic flows predicted from the traffic model explained in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. One of the biggest operational changes as a result of the Lower Thames Crossing is an improvement in traffic flows and a decrease in journey times across the River Thames and across many parts of the Lower Thames area. One clear benefit of this is better, faster access to existing jobs in the local and wider network. In our ward impact summaries, we flag how many existing jobs this brings to within a 30 or 60-minute commute of your local area. In this area, the largest increase within a 30-minute journey time by car would be in the Upminster ward, where some residents would have access to more than 88,000 additional jobs. That's a 17% increase. When you look at what jobs you can reach within an hour, the increase is even greater. The largest increase within a 60-minute journey time by car would be for those who live in Ockenden, where 550,000 additional jobs would fall within a 60-minute journey time by car. This is a 22% increase. These journey times are based on travelling at morning peak between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. You can find out more about operations when the road is open in our operations update. Our ward impact summaries are among the documents produced for this consultation. Each chapter includes a ward-specific overview of the impacts and benefits during construction and once the road is open, on topics such as environmental impacts and the impacts on the community. The wards included are those that are directly affected by the project or lie within our order limits. To make the ward summaries more user-friendly, we have split the document into 3 sections to cover the wards to the north and south of the River Thames. Each chapter will summarise the current situation and explain how construction and operation would affect that ward. We set out the impacts that are predicted to be, what the impacts are predicted to be, and the measures we would use to mitigate them. Where there are no impacts, we also highlight this. The ward impact summaries cover the following: traffic, public transport, footpaths, bridleways and cycle routes, visual, noise and vibration, air quality, health, biodiversity and contamination management. To find out more about our construction and operational impacts, please have a look at the ward impact summaries in your area. This brings us to the end of the recorded session. Many thanks for your time, and we'll now hand you back over to Sarah and the team for the Q&A.
Thank you, everyone.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you all for listening. I'm conscious that we've given you an awful lot of information to take on board there, but that marks the end of our pre-recorded section of this webinar. As we mentioned at the start of this evening, our goal today was to provide you with an overview of some of the changes that we've made since the design refinement consultation last year, as well as of our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing, and explain to you how we're going to mitigate its impact. If you'd like more detailed information, we'd suggest visiting our website, which is www.ltcconsultation.highwaysengland.co.uk. And there you can access a digital copy of all of our consultation materials. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break now, a chance for you to have a break from all that information we've just given you. We'll be back in 3 minutes' time when we'll be able to run through some of the questions that you've submitted before and during this webinar. We'll see you soon. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so now time for some of the questions. I think our first question this evening was submitted in advance of this evening's webinar. Gareth, this might be one for you if you're able to take it. They're asking us whether we have any approximate dates for the start and completion of the scheme.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'll pick that up. As the presentation said, obviously, you know, we're submitting the scheme through the development consent order process, and if the scheme gets the go ahead, we intend to start construction in 2024. The full construction period is 6 years, with a target road opening date of 2030. However, we won't be working for the full 6 years in all areas. There's some that the work will take most of the 6 years. For example, building, testing and commissioning the tunnel is programmed to take approximately 6 years, whilst if you look at the construction of the Tilbury Viaduct, that's programmed to take 3 years and 3 months. Similarly, works to the A13 junction, they're programmed to take 4 years and 3 months, and to the M25 junction, they're approximately 4.5 years. What I would recommend really is a significant amount of detail in our construction update that sets out some of these key findings, and I recommend that the people visit that.
Thanks there, Gareth. Steve, next question for you, if you're able to take this one, asking us what traffic impacts are there going to be on the A127? That's the A127.
Okay, yeah, sure. So it depends whereabouts you are on the A127. So to the west of the M25, what we're expecting is that there'll actually be an increase in traffic on the A127 because more people will want to access both the M25 but also Lower Thames Crossing itself. So I think the increase in the peak hour will be somewhere between 20 and 40%, and in the off-peak it'll be around 10%. To the east of the M25, it's a slightly different picture because we're forecasting a reduction in traffic using A127. So that's the section between the M25, junction 29 and the A128. And flows on this section we're expecting to decrease in the westbound direction by between 10 and 20% in the morning peak hour, and around 10% outside of peak hours. So it very much depends on whether you're east or west of the M25. Also worth mentioning that we are increasing capacity on the M25 to the north and south of junction 29 and through the junction. So it'll be 4 lanes in each direction over through junction 29, and there'll also be dedicated slip roads northbound M25 to westbound A127 and westbound A127 to southbound M25. So a good deal more capacity at the junction 29 itself. I think there's more info in the ward summaries as well if people want to look in more detail at the traffic impacts.
Thank you. It's quite a lot to take in there. Thank you. Gareth, next question for you, asking what's being done to mitigate environmental damage to Thames Chase?
Yes, yes, there is an impact on the Thames Chase Community Forest. We're looking to take approximately 14.5 hectares of land. Some we'd only require on a temporary basis. To mitigate this, we're looking to replace this land with 15.5 hectares of open space, which is all directly linked to the existing woodland. This would be landscaped to complement the current site and connect to the existing paths in the area, and been in regular discussions with Forestry England and the Thames Chase Trust so that we can work with them to meet the requirements when replacing the land. We'll also be providing a public footbridge over the M25, creating a stronger link to the Thames Chase Community Forest. And there was actually a picture of the footbridge in the presentation that John set out earlier. In addition to the Lower Thames Crossing proposals, We're also proposing to provide a new 100-hectare community woodland at Hole Farm in Essex. And across the route, we're providing 260 hectares of new woodland. And again, I suggest that people look at the operations update for more information.
Thank you. A lot of hectares to take in there. Steve, next question for you. Quite a specific one here. We've had a question about Dennis's Lane and asking whether we're going to use it for construction traffic, and also asking what about the roads around Dennis's Lane and whether they're going to be used by HGVs.
Sure. So I don't believe we're proposing to use Dennis's Lane as a designated access route, either for construction traffic or the workforce visiting those construction sites. There's more detail in our outline traffic management plan for construction, which lists the proposed restrictions for specifically for heavy goods vehicles, where they can and can't go. So other smaller roads in the area, we are proposing to use part of the B186, so including North Road, which we'd use to set up one of our sites. But once the site has been established, then we'd look to create specific haul routes directly off the M25. So that would significantly reduce the amount of traffic needing to use the local roads. So the intention is to only use that for site setup, and then rely on the haul routes, which are say directly accessed off the M25. But we are still in discussion with local authorities regarding possible further restrictions. So if you have any particular concerns you wish to flag, please do use our response form from this consultation, and we'll certainly use that feedback to develop our plans further.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
The next question, Gareth, this is one which we know has come up before and is of specific interest in this area, asking whether Havering residents are going to get a discount for the new crossing.
Okay. Yeah, actually charging at both the Dartford crossing and the Lower Thames crossing will be set by the government. Our proposals are that Dartford residents would continue to be offered discounts at the Dartford crossing. Gravesham residents will be offered a discount for the Lower Thames crossing. Thurrock residents would be offered discounts for both crossings. And as at Dartford, the user discount is applied to residents of those boroughs where the crossing entrance is located. The entrance being the tunnel entrance or the start of the bridge in Dartford's case. However, the decision on charging really is a matter for the government. There would, to confirm, there would be no charge to use the road itself between the M25 and the A13 junction, and that the charge would only apply to the crossing itself.
That's right. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you. Steve, another question for you. Has there been any change to Church Lane in North Ockendon?
Yes. Yes, I believe there has. In the last round of consultation, I think we earmarked a portion of Church Lane within our development boundary for some utility work. However, following further discussions with the utility stakeholders and feedback from residents, we've been able to remove Church Lane and also North Ockendon, some additional land from the overall order limits. So our proposals have been refined slightly, and we no longer need that portion of Church Lane.
Okay, thank you. And we've got a question now which actually came in last time, but we didn't have time to answer it on our last webinar. So hopefully it's still of use this evening. Someone has said, during construction, Upminster is likely to experience much more congestion. How will those impacts be mitigated? Gareth, can you take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Really there's two parts to how we mitigated this. Firstly is the use of I should say, of minimizing the amount of material that's actually being moved off-site and onto the site construction. And then there's maximizing the use of haul roads. So there's several mitigation measures to reduce the impact of construction on local residents. As I've said, including the use of local roads by construction vehicles. To specifically reduce the construction traffic impacts in the Upminster ward, we carry out measures such as the following. We look to minimise the use of the local road network as far as practicable through the construction of, as I mentioned, the temporary offline haul routes directly where we can from the strategic road network. Our proposals also allow for reuse of the excavated material, and this would substantially reduce the need to dispose of the excavated material via the road network, thereby reducing the number of HGV movements from the public road network during the construction phase. Following discussion with key stakeholders and where possible, HGVs associated with the construction of the project will be banned from using some of the local roads. And we aim to stockpile material within the order limits to allow material to be managed on site rather than off site, again reducing the number of HGV journeys needed.
Thank you, Gareth. Steve, a question for you, and we know this is one that's come up at the events that we've been holding recently, asking, well, do we even need LTC these days in a post-COVID world? Why is it still important?
Yeah, it is a question that we get asked quite frequently, you're right. So we know that Dartford Crossing remains over capacity. And it's true to say that the number of passenger vehicles on roads generally declined quite significantly during COVID and the lockdowns that we saw. But it's also true that the traffic levels are now pretty much back to previous levels, pre-COVID levels, I should say. And at Dartford, we've actually recently seen the busiest day ever for freight using the Dartford Crossing, which perhaps reflects the increase in deliveries to our homes, which has sort of been the case more and more over the last 18 months or so. I think it's a fact that around 80% of goods in the country have moved by road, and the route between Kent and Essex is no exception. So what Lower Thames Crossing provides is a doubling of road capacity across the Thames, and that really is a key link that we believe is needed, not just for leisure work journeys, but particularly for businesses, where goods are being moved around. So yes, in a post-COVID world, we believe Lower Thames Crossing is still very much needed.
And I think there is some information about Dartford's busiest day ever on our website if people want more information about just how busy it has been recently. Gareth, one more question for you. There are obviously going to be lots of workers building Lower Thames Crossing. We're being asked, what about local accommodation for all these people who are going to be involved in the construction? Where are they all going to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. If the scheme does go ahead, obviously it's a significant investment in the local area, and at its peak, up to 10,000 people will be working on the project at the peak of construction. And our priority really is to ensure as many of the people working on the project are from the local area. We'll be undertaking local recruitment drives, offering free training to local businesses, and introducing them to the main contractors, so they have the opportunity to work on the project. So really maximising the local support. However, for those staff who aren't from the local area, we've developed an accommodation strategy along with the local authorities. We'll have on-site accommodation for approximately 400 workers north of the river, plus accommodation for around about 80 tunnelling workers who will be living under pressurised conditions for the method of working they'll be adopting. We have also assessed the local housing market, and there is sufficient capacity for those workers who aren't from the local area to be included in the private rented accommodation and hotels. And we're also looking at things like an accommodation help desk, which would join up workers needing accommodation with those people looking to rent either their properties or a room within a property.
So there are some opportunities for local people as well. on that. We've had one other question come in asking us about the increase in traffic of heavy vehicles on Clay Tie Road. We're probably going to have to pick that one up perhaps offline. That's not information that we can access terribly easily here now, but we can probably maybe answer that if someone wants to call us directly on our telephone callback line. It might be something that we can pick up there. That's probably all we have time for this evening. I think we've answered all the questions that have come in, all the ones that we can do. So do remember that this is your opportunity to give us your views on this community impacts consultation. All the information that we've talked about this evening, including the response form, is available on our website. I'll just give you the web address one more time. It's highwaysengland.co.uk/LTC consultation. Of course, the easiest way to comment is by filling out our online consultation response form. But of course, you can submit a response using any of the methods that are listed there on the slide. And should you know anybody who doesn't have internet access, please do let them know that they're also able to call us. They can just simply give us a ring on 0300 123 5000 and they can provide a response over the phone. It's as easy as that. We are accepting responses until 23:59, that's 1 minute to midnight on the 8th of September. So if you'd like to comment on any aspects of the proposals from earlier consultations, then please use the other comments section of our response form. So I think that's about all we have time for this evening. One final reminder, you have until the 8th of September. That's when the consultation closes. Please do use this opportunity to give us your feedback on the consultation. And if you want to watch this webinar of any of our other webinars back, remember they're all hosted on YouTube. You can access them through our consultation website and through our own Lower Thames Crossing website. So if you've missed any of the detail, there's an opportunity to check back there. But one final reminder, do respond either by post, by email, or through the website. But from all of us, from the backroom team, from me and my fellow panelists, thank you very much for your time and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.